September the 16th, 2025. Well, first off, I guess a lot's been going on lately, so it gets to be jumbled. But the big thing, of course, is the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, which have kind of been dominating the news lately, at least in the conservative world. And I guess in the liberal world, I guess they're trying to figure out some way to rationalize what had happened. But from our point of view, it's an outrage and a tragedy. And of course, the investigation has been proceeding pretty expeditiously, with the FBI involved along with the local Utah officials. It looks like by the time most people see this video, that will see it, he will probably already be charged in the state court, and it looks like the investigation is kind of making progress. Given some of the laughable reactions of the left on this stuff, and maybe sad, absurd, what term do I want to use for that? Trying to claim that this guy, while he may very well have been a good, solid Republican boy back in the 2020 era, he's obviously gone off to the far left a long time since then. And I guess now he's involved with a transgender roommate, apparently. So apparently this is the ultimate source, I guess, of this whole thing, and maybe other factors as well. I get the feeling he's totally bought into the total leftist lie and so forth. But at any rate, it looks like we're moving ahead on the investigation, and it looks like to me it's a pretty open and shut case. Really, they've got all kind of evidence. I guess the only issue is, will it be a kind of an attempt for an insanity defense? But based on what I'm seeing, I don't even see that would be a viable course of action. Probably, if he gets a good lawyer and goes along with them, they'll probably attempt to negotiate a deal where he'll plead guilty in return for not being executed. And whether or not that will be accepted or not, I don't know. Currently, I think the attitude is no, that we're going to go ahead for the death penalty. But then again, given the nature of the legal system and the fact it requires a unanimous verdict of the jury, not just to find him guilty, but to actually impose a sentence, which is kind of, I think, an anomaly, and I think another one of the Supreme Court's historic errors, but nonetheless, that's the way it is. So we'll see how that goes. But certainly, I think that this has not worked out as the assassin intended, because it seems to have, in many ways, strengthened the Turning Point USA movement, which seems to be gaining a lot of support at this point, new chapters being organized and so forth. So perhaps the legacy of Charlie Kirk will live on and will actually expand and be even more powerful in spite of what happened. So if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and of course you can follow me on Rumble as well if you're subscribed to that. Yes, so at any rate, that's about it for the moment. It's been pretty much dominated the news coverage, which rightfully it should. Other issues that have come up during this whole thing, the Ukraine war is still an ongoing issue, as well as negotiations with China. I know the TikTok thing, they've now announced they have a framework. However, a lot of these things are somewhat dependent, I think, on other issues. For instance, also on the back burner issue is this whole push by all the people in Congress to put these gigantic sanctions on everybody that deals in oil with the Russians. But of course, President Trump has now issued this interesting sort of a weird ultimatum, which is almost one to Europe and other countries as much as anybody else, which was basically to say that, well, you're also buying oil and trading with Russia on various issues, and so if you before we put our sanctions on, you have to agree to put the same things on yourself. And I think he also made some idea that they would be able to buy oil from the United States of course, at a higher price than they're buying it from Russia. Just the logistics alone of getting it there would probably, in many instances, be that. So we'll see how that all plays out. My own personal opinion is I think that Trump doesn't want to put these sanctions on for the very reason that the economic impact on his own policies would be bad. He's counting on these tariffs he's put on to actually uh, basically pay for the big beautiful bill, if you will. Maybe not pay for all the deficit that was created historically under previous administration's policies, and even going back to his and so forth, but at least pay for the added amount from on the baseline budget, as they call it, due to the big beautiful bill, and therefore these tariffs would then come in and pay for that loss of revenue due to the tax cuts, at least initially, and then hopefully the stimulus would be of the tax cuts would then make up for it. So why I think he's very reluctant to go ahead on this issue. On the other hand, he's under, I think, immense political pressure to do something like this. And so I think by putting the onus on Europe to and everybody else to do the same thing, I think he's perhaps hoping that they won't, and therefore he doesn't have to, and therefore the thing will just continue as is. That's kind of my take on the whole thing. But we'll have to see how that again develops. I think it's a very important situation, and of course, the other thing I think that the Russians have mishandled the dealing with Trump since the Alaska meeting, in the sense that it looks to me like that by being a little bit more forward about trying to negotiate a deal with the Ukrainians, and maybe even offering a few concessions, that he could they could put themselves in a much better position with respect to Trump, because I'm pretty sure the thing would blow up because the Ukrainians wouldn't agree to it. And therefore, that'd be my thought. But instead, they seem to have taken a more obstinate stance, which then gets Trump very disappointed, as he likes to put it. And so we'll see what comes of this. On the other hand, and we also don't know exactly how India and China particularly will, and for that matter Brazil, will really respond if we do put draconian sanctions on. Because that means basically trade with these countries will essentially vanish. And we'll be back in the situation we were last April, with not much coming in. And that'll lead to a lot of lack of merchandise eventually. Because this time I think most of the excess merchandise that had been stocked up in anticipation has pretty much been spent, and so that will no longer be the situation. On another front, which is a little bit completely different type of thing, is of course last Tuesday, that would be September the 9th, I believe it was, that we did have that hearing in the House Oversight Committee, that subcommittee, with Representative Luna, and on the UAP situation, and I don't know, it didn't really get to, I think maybe not the best possible witnesses you could have had, but there was still some interesting details came out, and the basic focus I think was on the fact that the people that are reporting this stuff have been subjected to some pretty serious harassment and retaliation. And a lot of the discussion was, well, what can Congress do about that? Because given the fact these people need to have a security clearance, and given the discretion that the executive branch has over issuing these based on the idea of national security, it isn't too good to be a whistleblower if you want to maintain your security clearance and stay employed. And so that's the main thing that counts. There are a lot of the rest of it was, of course, the George Knapp's discussion of how he got information out of the Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and he revealed a fact that they kind of the Russians didn't have the best system for marking their documents, apparently, which allowed him to fairly easily get this stuff out. And there's a lot of these things are stories anybody in the subject already knows about, though. There was some witnesses, one from Vandenberg Air Force Base, I guess now Space Force Base, then Air Force, about a major launch of satellites, that a large UAP showed up, and then another witness talks about seeing a triangular craft apparently taking off another Air Force base, and the fact that there were, I guess, military and civilian personnel, at least in civilian clothes, probably intelligence community, my guess. However, the claim that these objects are actually products of our reverse engineering program, in my opinion, is very doubtful. But it does raise another interesting possibility, and that is, has there been covert communication between elements of the U.S. government and extraterrestrials? Um, I mean, that seems to be a much more likely explanation for this object, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe it just came and they happened to be there and saw it and then it took off. But at any rate, the mysteries continue about that, and the investigation uh, will be necessary. I think there is an ongoing push to try to get this UAP Disclosure Act passed, and I think Senator Rounds has expressed some optimism it might get in the Defense Authorization Act this year. We'll see. But at any rate, that's kind of on that. But I think the main focus, we're going to be seeing a lot more, going back to the original topic, on the Charlie Kirk investigation of his murder, and the fact that it seems like there's a group of people who did have maybe some prior knowledge that this was going to happen, and they may themselves find themselves in trouble. Although, whether or not they can skirt it by arguing that they thought the whole thing was a joke, or that they had no real involvement, I don't know. We'll see. But that's another thing that's come up on this whole subject, and we'll have to stay tuned in for the further developments, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot more on it. This is going to be a big story for quite a while. And also, there seems to be an increased effort, I think, perhaps by the Justice Department, to look into a RICO investigation of some of the radical groups that fund a lot of these protests against ICE particularly. I think that's going to be another development. So at any rate, I'll be wrapping this up for now. And as always, of course, I'll be posting this on YouTube and Rumble. And the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. So all for this time.